Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 36th California Small Farm Conference. My name is Guido Lois. I'm a Communications and Events Manager with CAF, which stands for Community Alliance with Family Farmers. I'm so happy to introduce you to this panel today. I think it's going to be amazing. We're just commenting on it. It's the one of the workshops on this conference that has gotten the biggest attendee list, the most signups. But before we go into that, I wanted to remind you that this workshop is being recorded. If you want to watch it after, we'll send you the link. And that if you have any questions, we ask you to please ask them using the Q&A function that you can find in the bottom of your screen. And if you don't find it in the bottom of your screen, it must be under More, which is those three little dots on the lower right of your Zoom screen. Besides that, I wanted to thank our sponsors for making this possible. It's the 36th edition of this conference that we're super proud of. My first time hosting it, so I'm super excited. And then, yeah, Joanne, if you want to take it over from here, I'll be here to assist you with whatever you need.
Thanks, Guido. Cool. Well, I am going to start by introducing myself and our two other speakers. And then you'll hear from the three of us. We are going to save questions for the end. You can put the questions in the Q&A, and you can make comments in the chat. So actually, since Sam is the first speaker, I'm going to introduce him first. Sam Earnshaw, who's my husband. That's why we're here together in the same room. He studied forestry at UC Berkeley in the mid-'80s. He and I started Neptune Farms in Santa Cruz, where we sold vegetables and cut flowers to retail stores and farmers markets. And he also worked for Community Alliance of Family Farmers for 19 years, putting on breakfast meetings and field days with the Lighthouse Farm program. He's helped growers put in lots of hedgerows, hundreds of hedgerows, and he's the author of Hedgerows for California Agriculture, a resource guide published by CAF, and then published a second edition a few years back. I'm going to introduce Stephen next, even though he is the third speaker. Stephen Pryor, he and I work together at Wild Farm Alliance. He is the technical advisor entomologist for Wild Farm Alliance, and he concentrates on applied biocontrol using flowering plant species to enhance the ability of various crop systems to support permanent beneficial arthropod populations. Stephen grew up in Atwater area growing organic almonds, peaches, sweet potatoes, and onions on their family farm. He's been a PCA for over 20 years and working in orchards, vineyards, row crops. He's currently an independent PCA for coastal crops, and he's also an organic inspector working through the Central Coast and Southern Central Valley region. And me, I'm Joanne Baumgartner, Executive Director of Wild Farm Alliance. I work in the intersection between biodiversity and agriculture. And I've been working recently on beneficial birds. That's what I'm going to talk about today, beneficial birds and hedgerows, and also working with Stephen on beneficial insects and their habitat. I've in the past done a lot of work around the National Organic Standards and biodiversity conservation and the co-management of food safety and conservation, and farmed with Sam for many years and got my master's looking at birds eating codling moth in apple orchards. So Sam, I'm going to key up your presentation, and I think, does that look good, Stephen?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do we start it?
It's started.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be here. We've actually spoken at the CAF conference in the past a few times. So I'm going to run through a program on conservation plantings on farms. It's not working.
Oops, let's see, maybe you have to go like this. I guess you'll have to hit that.
So we're gonna talk about various, I can't see the top of it there,
Hmm.
but
Here, I can help you. Oh, and just, okay.
well, that's gonna be in the way of everything.
Um,
Now we're getting away from my slideshow. Okay.
sorry.
back.
Okay, let's,
Go back.
yes, we can go back. Oh no, we're going forward. Here, let's go back this way.
Back, way back. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Mm.
So Hedgerows farmscaping and many things here. Conservation practices, these are the ways that farmers have been using vegetation: hedgerows, grass waterways, filter strips, riparian plantings, windbreaks, and beetle banks. Native plant hedgerows, this is grow fairly quickly, and they do many things like compete weeds and bring in beneficial insects, pollinators, and birds. We've done perennial grasses for erosion and weed control, filter strips between crops and other areas. This is between a crop and a hedgerow. Windbreaks. We all know that we try to use a lot of native plants in windbreaks. And then beetle banks are where the perennial bunch grasses provide, and Stephen probably can talk more about that. And we've done riparian plantings. This is some Fremont cottonwood. Those are only like 2 years old in San Benito County. So some of the functions of these plantings are soil erosion control, weed control, beneficial insect pollinator habitat, wildlife habitat, sequester carbon, non-point source water pollution control reduction, air quality and dust control, barriers, riparian stabilization, windbreak and climate modification, aesthetic value, economic returns, and the bottom one is actually increase in biodiversity. And they also, some of these overlap in the sense of buffering climatic extremes, such as protecting and building soils, increasing water infiltration, erosion control, habitat, sequestering carbon. As later in the slide, so we'll see that hedgerows are very effective in sequestering carbon, protecting from winds and climate, and increasing biodiversity. So it's providing habitat too for birds and insects that are moving out of their normal range. We all hear about hedgerows in England, you can see, and there's movements to protect them as industrial ag has moved in. In the 30s, this dust cloud actually blew over Washington, D.C. when the Soil Conservation Service was being voted on in Congress, and NRCS is the latest Soil Conservation Service change to NRCS. We learned a lot of hedgerows from John Anderson up in Yolo County. He had hedgerow farms. And one of the things about him that's very interesting, we have these life zones in our state where the elevation, rainfall, climate, and biota are similar in many ways. For instance, several years we were down in Los Angeles where Audubon Society had installed a brand new hedgerow, and they're using the same plants that we've used up in the Central Valley and even as far north as Marin County and north. So we have a very forgiving set of native plants that have a wide adaptability and where they actually grow. And, you know, people think these non-native plants are great. You look around, they're everywhere, but they were brought in because they don't have insects and things associated with them. And so one of the things that the native plants do is that they actually have evolved with a lot of the beneficial insects that are here, and then they go after the pests. So you find a lot more beneficial insects and pollinators associated generally with the natives. And There's some great native plant nurseries around. If you go to this website here, calscape.org, it's a wealth of information. It's put on by the California Native Plant Society. You can put a name of a plant in. It tells you where it grows, where the nurseries, what nurseries sell it. And that's Pat Ryan, who worked at did work at Runner Creek, and was another one of our mentors as we working with the nursery was great. We'd ask them, we learned a lot of our new plants from the nursery people. Oaks are a great plant to have on farms, and if there's places where they can grow. And this is a very neat slide that just shows all the different critters and things associated with just an oak. This is one species of oak, but it's like this for a lot of them. It has insects, it has birds, it has. So oak trees, and this is also kind of indicative of what a lot of the other plants do. They have these complex relationships with many of the biota. So one of the things as we do work on these, we try to plant, we worked initially the BIOS program of CAF, and Bob Bugg was an entomologist with Davis and helped generate some of this information with these species down this one side, showing you get this blooming period over the whole year. And so when we plant a hedgerow, we try to include a whole variety of plants that have blooming periods that go, and just single species will not give you this. Sites for hedgerows, there's all kinds of good places along fence rows, along roads. This was one at Phil Foster's Pinnacle Farm. This was 7 years old. They grow quite rapidly. And this was ceanothus, coffeeberry, baccharis, the coyote brush, elderberry, toyon. You can have short flowers. This was a little berm that the farmer was always weeding, and when we put in there, we put there was yarrow, there was these low growing ceanothuses and coffeeberries and salvias, sages. So the nurseries have a lot of these lower growing plants. And this again kind of shows how rapidly these plants can grow. This was on a strawberry field here, and this was used to prevent the weeds and things. 18 months later, that's what that planting looked like. And so irrigation is the key to these things. If they don't get water, they're not going to grow, but when they get water, they do very well. This was on Tom Willie's farm in Madera. He did a three row thing, and the cars and trucks went by there, would blow up all this dust. And also, this was a California fuchsia in the front, and it provided dust protection, but also was a great habitat for beneficial insects and pollinators. Some farmers do 2-row hedgerows. This was at Tom Bro's Live Earth farm. This was a 2-row hedgerow. This is a 3-row hedgerow, if the space is there. This was one we did near Fireball. And you can see this is pretty bare out there. And so the farmer had almonds on one side, and he was growing organic cotton over here. So this is kind of the way you do it. You lay out the plants, and our spacings are sometimes 6 feet can be a good spacing for a hedgerow. Bring in some compost, dig the holes. And this is watering the holes is really essential. When you dig the hole, you don't stick the plant, even though you've got a drip system that's gotten it started, you don't just plant, you rely on that. What we'll do, we don't have a wand like this. He used this wand for his almond trees, but a bucket of water in a water truck is like, when you dig a hole, just fill that hole with water and then put your plant in, and then the drip tape will take it from there. Again, showing the rapid growth of these plants. This was 1 year. We planted this in November 2008. Look at it 1 year later. They were doing really great. And there it is 8 years later. So, and this is in the middle of Fireball in the Central Valley. These plantings do require water. A lot of times we don't have to water them after 3 years, but this is a very, very low water table. Again, this is the same farm, but just showing what was happening here with where was this? You create this, you get habitat. And the scout who would go out there was going along looking at this thing, and a snake was underneath him, and he jumped out of his shoes. And he also found a coyote that was living under the coyote brush. So you know, there's no habitat there. You create habitat, and the insect, a lot of times we'll walk down a hedgerow right after we planted, and there'll already be lady beetles and other bugs flying around on it going, hey, what's this? A brand new planting. At that same farm, he was paying a beekeeper to put his bees there and keep them there. Is when we had the hedgerow in, so many the bees were able to use this that he reduced his the beekeeper reduced the charges to the farmer by several $1,000s. It was a significant impact that nobody had ever even anticipated in a hedgerow. But so there's just another one. And Rachel Long did a study showing how over years the reduction in pest management and various other things helps bring the cost of it. Planting on a berm is really important. You get the plants like to have air around their roots and the root crowns, so you know, you see actually from the Central Valley, you'll see a lot of all the orchards are planted up on berms. So we started making, this is a really big berm, but and then weeds are always a problem, and we've tried several different ways. We did this a bunch of times, put alyssum in for some weed control. There's this is not a great way to do it, but some people do that, produce the weed fabric. This was Tom Willie's again. He solarized it. He in June, he put this out there with drip lines underneath it. And this is the weed bank that was there. Without this solarized process, this whole thing would have been weeds. And you saw earlier what his hedgerow looked like. So you can't do that everywhere. You have to have the temperatures for it, but it works well if it's possible. And then afterwards, mulching. This is a eucalyptus mulch, and eucalyptus is great as an allelopathic for some things, but it doesn't harm these plants when they're in 1 gallons. They do fine. This is that same planting 6 months after we had so in the mulch, you know, we try to mulch every plant. You can get the wood chips from a tree cutter. You can buy them, and but they really help. They keep the moisture in and they keep the weeds down. This is not the way you're able to mulch every crop, but this was kind of an interesting one. You can see that hedgerow was planted along a bank, and then this side dump came along and dumped a big load of mulch, and then we raked it down around the plants. We protected them with buckets as they went by. Like I say, that's not your everyday project. I think this is the only time we ever did it, but sure made a great picture. So this is a more common thing. If you have a really bad weedy area, like this is all grass, this was, we put cardboard down, 2 layers of cardboard, and then put mulch on top of it. But I don't know why it keeps going back like that. And then, so windbreaks are really another thing you can plant on the edge of farm if you have a wind issue. You know, the wind comes and protects the certain 10 times the height of the trees is protected from winds. This was a windbreak, a really early windbreak we planted, and we came in there the next day, there was an egret already checking it out. And the riparian planting, this is again, there's 11 months of growth on that. So carbon, this slide shows how comparison of 10 years of woody hedgerow plantings, and the soil carbon was higher in the upper 100 centimeters under the hedgerows relative to other fields. Assuming adoption rates of 50 to 80% of hedgerows across California with similar situations, hedgerows could sequester 11 to 17 million tons of CO2, or 7 to 12% of California's annual greenhouse reduction goals. And it's just, you can see the roots there. And if you do this common planter and some of the other things, it shows that these woody plantings are taking in carbon, and they're really a great thing at this point to be thinking about. This is research that Rachel Long and others did to show that these are our very common set of plant species we use: the ceanothus, buckwheat, coffeeberry, coyote brush, toyon, elderberry, just among, brings in some of these beneficial insects. You're going to hear a lot of this from Stephen, just showing what the wasps can do and all these pests that do get managed or controlled by them. There's beneficial insects, lots of beneficial insects. So ceanothus and buckwheat are very attractive to syrphid flies, the hover flies. Yarrow is attractive to the minute pirate bug, the damsel bugs, and the big-eyed bugs. And wasps, coyote brush, which is one of our favorites. We call it our skeleton plant, our basic backbone. When we do a hedgerow, we'll put coyote brush scattered all along the entire hedgerow. No matter what happens, you'll have a hedgerow. That thing is just a wonderful survivor. And there's male and female. Coyote brush is in the sunflower family, and that's a female looking there, and the male doesn't have quite so many flowers in that same way. But this shows, this graph goes from June to October along the bottom, and it shows each one of these is a different one of these plants: yarrow, coyote brush, ceanothus, buckwheat, toyon, and it just shows how wasps come to all these. If you have just one plant, you're going to get that, but with these other plants, you get a lot more. And it's the same with coffeeberry. This lacewings, there's a lacewing larva. If we only had one plant there, we wouldn't get this kind of activity. This goes from May to October, and it shows on these plants all the lacewings that come over that season from May. So again, another example of why variety of this is so important. And ladybugs. Toyon is attractive to ladybugs and lacewings. And there's deer grass is a great plant, and spiders and ladybugs like that one. Alyssum, a lot of growers, I'm sure everyone's familiar with how alyssum is used, and Stephen's going to talk more about this. But this is on a lakeside organic farm in Watsonville, and there's other ways of using alyssum besides one row. Eric Brennan in Salinas has talked about using individual plants, and they grow them up and put them in their planters. So when they're transplanting lettuce, they'll just drop alyssum and other of the beneficials. I think what am I getting to?
You have a couple more minutes.
Won't have any more.
Couple.
2 minutes.
Go ahead. Just go
Okay.
ahead.
Owl boxes. Steve Simmons and Joanne's going to really go into this one on birds. Birds eat bugs. Perches are great. This is a manzanita branch on a perch, which is a really creative way for that. And then the bees, the pollination, of course, the bees they help increase yields. And some of the sources, the Xerces Society has done a lot about pollination and bees. Is a flowering hedgerow that Rachel Long planted. We've seen a mountain lion in a hedgerow, but that doesn't come in every day. Keeping the corridors grassed is really important. There's a coyote in a hedgerow, and some of the problems with native plantings pests can be attracted with food safety concerns, but it's overridden by the benefits mostly, and farmers keep coming back with hedgerows, movement, insects in the field, genetic pollution. Some can have diseases. There's literature on which ones, but so we keep track of that. And then the high cost of maintenance. The spinach outbreak, we all know about that, and that caused a lot of problems because you get some critters in there, a frog, a snake. But actually snakes are good, and we always encourage the workers not to kill snakes, which is something. They catch rodents, they eat rodents. John Anderson there with the snake, he was our mentor on hedgerows. And then these are the important factors on food safety: the number of animals, the types of animals, the type of crop, harvest procedure, neighboring influence, pathogens of concern, and additional processing. So you monitor the crop, not the habitat. And so the buyers and auditors are still having problems with telling farmers not to plant, but it's not true. These fences and various techniques to keep away the critters. Here's some quick thing on grasses, and I am getting to the end here. So, but grass waterways are really effective. You could look at these two ditches and this kind of erosion we get, but the perennial grasses can really hold the soil. We do grass waterways with seed and straw and drip tape to bring it up. Filter strips are very effective. This was John Anderson's grass farm. This was an area planting. And this is putting them in with plugs, and this is what this looked like. This was at USDA Spence Research Center, and this is turning a grass waterway into, a eroding ditch into this grass waterway. This was standing in the same place looking upstream and downstream and vegetating the eroding ditch. Got a big rainstorm came in, and the next day it was there. It didn't cut away like it had been before, and that was all done with grasses and riparian plants. Deer grass, willows. This is staking willows into an eroding ditch. There's the stakes are just put in. They're soaked in a bucket for 3 months or a month, and then stick them in, and they grow. This has to be pruned every year, but it's definitely holding that ditch. This is again a riparian planting. Irrigation, very important. I talked about that. We get a little bite out of it once in a while. We hung the tapes after that. And maintenance and follow-up. Maintain the irrigation system. The biggest cause of failure is the lack of water. They can outgrow weeds, but control them. The rodents, replant when necessary. There's somebody I know, that's Joanne. And replanting, track the performance of plants. We have had children help us do plantings. There's lots of resources out there. NRCS is their website is fantastic. This was an original thing that Yola put out, and ATRA. This is the calf hedgerow manual, and Wild Farm Alliance has this beneficial birds one. So that's hedgerows in England. Salinas Valley with no hedgerows. There's an Alba that had some really nice hedgerows, a model for what it could be. And that's it. So if you got any more questions, there's my phone number, there's my email address, and you can chat or question if you got questions, and hope you enjoyed the show.
All right, thank you, Sam. Let's see, I need to stop sharing and then bring up my presentation. Oops. Okay, let's see. Now I'm gonna share and slideshow away from start.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to talk about beneficial birds and how you can support them with hedgerows and habitat. Wild Farm Alliance promotes healthy, viable agriculture that protects and restores wild nature. This is a bluebird female with a caterpillar in a vineyard. And so what I'm going to cover is what pest insects birds eat, what kind of rodents they kill. Just like us, birds have needs, so I'm going to go over that. I'm going to talk about how hedgerows and other habitat can support birds, and then a bit about discouraging the few pest birds that at short periods of time when they can cause damage. So a big overview picture is to think about how birds are in decline. Since the 1970s, there's 3 billion birds less, and that's a problem. And grassland birds are most in trouble, but birds across the spectrum are in trouble. So insects are the bottom of our food chain. They're so important for everybody, including, you can see here is the insectivores. That's like insectivorous birds really need insects, and we need insects for food security. There's a global decline of insects, just like with birds. And almost half of the reasons why we have these declines is because of agriculture, intensification, pesticides, and fertilizers. But almost 60% of the continental US is in agriculture. So we also have an ability to turn things around. And CDFA thinks so. CDFA has been putting a lot of funds into climate smart agriculture. Probably a lot of you know about the Healthy Soils program. We're helping a few growers with that. We also are helping growers with pollinator habitat program, partnering with the Pollinator Partnership Group to install hedgerows and other plantings. And we're helping growers put together conservation plans that include hedgerows and habitat. And RCS is a great resource too for getting both technical and financial support to put in habitat. They have over 20 billion, that's with a B, dollars available over the next 5 years, and they're rolling it out. So check in with your NRCS person if you haven't already. So Sam showed this. This is our Supporting Beneficial Birds Managing Pest Birds publication, and you can take a shot of that QR code and it'll take you right there. The thing about birds is the overwhelming majority of songbirds are beneficial during the nesting season because they're feeding insects to their young. These birds, like chickadees and bluebirds, feed their young somewhere between 150 and 170 times per day. Well, that's a huge amount of insects that they're feeding, and their kids are around in those nests for about 3 weeks. So many insects are being eaten. Avian pest control has been studied in all kinds of crops and all around the world. In the appendix of our guide, we identified 120 avian pest control studies and found that 90% of them showed that birds were beneficial. And in those studies, researchers do all kinds of different ways of studying birds. 30% of them found that habitat was important and increased pest control, and 20% found that nest boxes increased pest control. This is not a new topic. Economic ornithology, such a cool name, started in 1885, Department of Agriculture. And by the 1930s, before DDT really took over, there was almost 1,500 studies on birds. And here's an example. This book, The Practical Value of Birds, came out in 1913, and they they asked farmers to shoot birds. You can't do that now. Pickle their stomachs. They looked at 562 red-tailed hawk stomachs, and they found almost 300 mice and another 130 other mammals, and almost 40 or almost 50 insects. So fast forward to today, there's a lot of research going on looking at birds. And this is Julie Jedlicka. She, for 10 years, looked at bluebirds in Napa vineyards and found that if you put nest boxes up, the birds were feeding 350% more caterpillars near those nest boxes than if you, in this research, if you just put out the caterpillars without nest boxes. She also used DNA analysis to find out that they were eating these insects that eat plants like sharpshooters and leafhoppers, butterflies and moths. And they were not eating spiders and hardly any beneficial insects. I think it was like 3%. I mean, birds aren't necessarily particular, but there's a lot more pest insects than beneficials. This is Sarah Cross's work in alfalfa showing that birds reduce pest insects by 33% and more when there was at least 2 trees in a field. Barn swallows in canola fields helped reduce the insects. There was 18% of this canola pests in their feces under their nest boxes. In the Midwest, Megan Garfinkel's looked at songbirds in prairies, and when prairie is up against corn or soybeans, they help with pest control. Been a lot of studies looking at apples, including my research where I looked at birds eating codling moth in apple orchards, and these other researchers listed here in different percentages also looked in different parts of the world. Everybody eats apples, but there's different birds and different things being found. But overall, they're important. There's chickadees are here in the States. But over in Europe, one of their relatives reduced codling moth population so much that the yields increased 66%. This is Sasha Heath. She studied woodpeckers and other birds reducing walnut pest. It was actually more codling moth because they live both in apples and walnuts. In fact, she found 35% of the pests were being eaten by birds. And she also found that when there was more local like hedgerow habitat and or landscape surrounding habitat, there was more predators and more predation. Megan Garfinkel studied hedgerows and looked at their influence on kale crops, organic kale, and found that there was an average of 24% removal of these pest insects, but up to 80% in some places. These Swainson's hawks congregate in big groups, and they were found to remove 300,000 caterpillars, which is amazing. This is Alyssa Olympi, and she and the UC Davis team, I think from some other universities too, studied organic strawberries, both monocultures, strawberries and strawberries that are part of a farm system with many other things going on. And what they found was that when they conserved semi-natural farm habitat, there was decreased crop damage. Birds like strawberries. There was very little damage, maybe 3% damage in the diversified farms, but a lot more damage in the monocultures. There was also very little risk in the diversified farms as it relates to food safety, and much higher risk because they're drawing in flocks of birds in the monocultures. So they are the semi natural habitat, i.e. diverse habitat, relates to or supports a diverse community of birds. And they theorize that if monocultures increase their farm habitat, their costs would decrease by 23%. This is Matt Johnson. He and a whole slew of grad students have been looking at barn owls and found that almost 3,500 rodents a year can be eaten by a single barn owl family. They'll eat gophers and mice and bulls, and they're amazing. So birds have similar needs to us, right? They need a place to sleep that's safe and warm and not too hot and not too windy. They need a place to bathe and eat, and they need food. So food, like plants provide food in the form of fruit and seeds, but plants also support caterpillars. And some plants, like these plants, can support a lot of caterpillars, oaks and willows and so forth. And caterpillars are eaten by baby birds. This is showing 16 out of 20 different species are eating caterpillars. Birds need cover, like when they first fledge, but also they need cover from the elements and predators. They need water. They drink. They clean their feathers. Some of them make mud nests. So birds are will live in these different parts of the canopy. They'll live up, some will live up high, some are in the middle, some are lower on the ground. And having a diverse habitat means that you can have a diversity of birds on your farm that can help with pest control. And if you can't or don't have the bandwidth right away to put in a hedgerow or put in permanent habitat, you can always plant sunflowers, which bring in structure. And this study showed that when they did that, the birds helped with pest control. We've created this cool tool called the Beneficial Bird Habitat Assessment, a native plant tool. And so it really helps farmers and conservation planners figure out how to best support birds depending on the situation on the farm. And we have a guide accompanies it that really digs into the logic behind it all. And we are looking at what's surrounding the farm, what's farmscape features. We're looking at farm management, like making it more diverse and not using so much pesticides. And then we choose a selection of plants, and the tool rates everything. And so it rates plants just like this chart here, where we've taken Sam's 160 plants, native plants that he uses in farmscaping, and that we do too. We rate them with our tool, and you can also download this chart separately. So to give you some idea, it's better to have plants like these oak trees are providing fruit. This symbol actually means fruit and flower, or fruit and flowers, yes, and seeds. So they provide it year round. The darker these symbols, the caterpillars, and over here is better than the lighter. So you can see oak trees are super important for birds in so many ways. And this data in this column is coming from Cornell Ornithology's Birds of the World, where they have a huge database of journal articles written by ornithologists who are tracking which birds are using which plants for general habitat, for food, for nesting. So willows, they're really great for a lot, and so are oak trees. Ceanothus are good, and you're going to hear they're really, or Sam was talking about how great they are for insects. Coyote brush is good. So it's not like just because they're not superb, you shouldn't plant them. You should plant a diversity, as Sam was talking about, but you want to get some of the good ones in there too. We have also published this nesting structure for beneficial songbirds. I'm not going to go so much into that today, but just you could check it out. It's on our website, download for free. And if you put in a bluebird box, bluebirds will may likely occupy it, but all these other birds potentially could occupy it too, and that is very cool. How much time do I have?
Well, it's 5:30. Stephen's got 20 minutes.
Okay, so I have 5. So blowing up that chart, then the cool thing about it also is it tells you what insects they're eating and other stuff, but if you don't have time to look at who's using the nest box because you're too busy farming, you can always look at it later and look at the nest, and the nest built inside will tell you who's using it. So sometimes people think, oh, I don't want to bring habitat in because it's going to bring pest birds in. But this study from Sarah Cross showed that it was sunflower fields next to hedgerows and sunflower fields not next to hedgerows. And there was no, I mean, birds like sunflowers, right? Hedgerows did not increase any of the damage. Thank you. And what was interesting with this study was birds weren't so important. The hedgerow didn't make them provide more pest control, but the hedgerow being there helped insects provide a lot of pest control. So it doesn't pay to remove habitat. The birds that cause the most amount of problems are these huge these birds that are flocking in huge numbers, and they are flocking because that's the way they stay away from predators. They also they're not looking for a little hedgerow to hang out because there's so many of them. They need big habitat places to shelter in, and they really don't like being in the middle or at a hedgerow or on one tree where there might be like a predator bird. So when these flocks are flying, they're seeing something over here on the left when they're up really high. This hedgerow on the right, this looks like that. What they're looking for are fields of grapes or something like that. So these 5 birds along the edges are the birds that are in a survey of California growers. These are the most wanted birds, but even still, they can be beneficial. So turkey, crow, starling, blackbirds, and robins. This is a female blackbird, and look, she has all these insects in her mouth, and that's because she's she's gleaning insects, and it is an insectivore during her breeding season, but then later you might have to discourage her. So how do you discourage birds? You can use visual stuff. Scare tape works probably one of the best, but you don't want to leave it up all year because you're going to discourage birds when you don't want to. These scarecrows work pretty good. There's also this technology that recognizes birds and then plays things. The sound calls work, but you have to move them a lot because the birds get used to it. A grower got really creative and had seen a Cooper's hawk in his farm, and so he put up these perches and on his sprinklers, or unscrewed the sprinklers, put the perches up, and the bird damage went away. Sometimes there is a little bit, not of the flocking huge damaged birds, but there's a little bit of like sparrows coming from hedgerows, and you can do things like provide food that they like bolting plants or grass buffers in between the hedgerow and the plants. This is Sarah Cross again, and she helped bring New Zealand falcons into vineyards, and the growers were saving $200 to $300 per hectare because that falcon was scaring pest birds. We have so many birds that are raptors here in the US. They only have 1 falcon in New Zealand. And you can put up American kestrel boxes. They're a kind of falcon, and they scare the heck out of pest birds in Michigan cherry orchards where the growers save millions of dollars. You can also put up perches for kestrels and other kind of raptors. So designing a farm, you want to, or habitat on a farm, you want to make the most of birds' foraging strategies, the fly catching and aerial diving, ground foraging, gleaning in the foliage and trees and on the bark, stalking, soaring, air foraging. And so you may start with 1 crop, but you want to diversify. And as you diversify the farm, you're diversifying the bird community. And so putting in a hedgerow and making it connect to other hedgerows And maybe you have a pasture, and if you're lucky, you have some riparian habitat, some other places for non-crop habitat. You want crop diversity. And if you're lucky enough to have some big trees, you're going to have tree cavities, and then you're going to have this diversity of birds. I want to point out, this is one really cool tool, and I'm almost out of my time, is Merlin. If you don't have it, download it. Merlin is free. It's by Cornell Lab. And the coolest thing is that once you have it, you can hit this button, the sound button, and right now birds are starting to sing again, and it'll tell you who's out there. You can learn so fast who is on your farm. And check out our videos. This is Rachel Long. We did a video with her on hedgerows. They're only 5 minutes, and we also include farmers with researchers on our videos. We have 7 hours of continuing credit from DPR on avian pest control. Check that out. We also have a 10-course Role of Birds on the Farm self-certification course. And Stephen's going to talk about this. We've been working on this new publication, which is not about birds. It's about predator and parasitoids and their habitat, insects or arthropods. And you can get to it by, if you take a screenshot of this, or a camera, or a shot of it, of the QR code. We have lots of publications. Please join us. And thank you very much. I'm going to quit sharing. All right, Stephen, you're up.
All right, I'll share my screen. Let's get to the proper place.
If you did, while Stephen's looking for that, managing pests with predators and parasitoid habitat, you can go to our website. And right now it's just an excerpt. We haven't finished it. It has 5 of the 10 crops that we'll be including. And what we do is look at the major pests in the crop, the beneficials that attack those pests, and how do you support the beneficials? Okay, Stephen.
Okay, so start off, extraneous slide, just who I am, a nice bug feeding on a flower. So what we're going to talk about is the parasitoids and the predators in various crops and how to accentuate them using a variety of different plants. So Sam talked about hedgerows, and Joanne talked about hedgerows as well. And those are the starting points, because perennial habitat is like your bank account. And in preserving that perennial habitat, you preserve the overwintering structure that these insects require. But then you also require some annual or crop amenable species. So in a perennial crop, you may have perennial species out in the actual crop itself that will bloom at the proper time and drag these insects out to where you need them to address your crop pests. So beneficials can move up to 660 feet into adjacent crops. Parasitoid wasp working on a lepidopteran larvae there. So bloom intensity is important when you're dealing with your hedgerows, and you would like a consistent bloom intensity because these predatory insects need both pollen and nectar to provide the protein and the carbohydrates. Protein provides them with what they need to generate eggs. Carbohydrates provide them with what they need to move around and find their hosts. So this is some work I did on glassy-winged sharpshooter over in Kern County. And glassy-winged sharpshooter exhibited a high preference for overwintering in citrus, but then as an adaptation to avoid their egg parasitoid, they moved en masse over into the vineyards once the vineyards broke bud. And glasswing sharpshooter has a wide spectrum of hosts. So it's as far as citrus. This photograph was taken in a watermelon rind growing by the roadside. And as you can see, here's a new egg mass. And then over here was an egg mass that had been found partially by the parasitoids, all these small exit holes. But then these nymphs escape parasitism, and they have a different hatching structure where they slip out underneath the edge of the egg sheath, whereas the parasitoids basically bit holes in the egg masses to escape. So this is a single parasitoid per host egg. They do not lay multiple eggs in a given egg. So you can see the utilization of the citrus leaf here by glasswing sharpshooter and some lepidopteran larvae who has chewed along these edges here. They have been oblique banded leaf roller, who knows what this is. But you see partial parasitism in this egg mass, and a lot of these may have been unsuccessful parasitism. Here are new egg masses in the same leaf. Glasswing sharpshooter has a wide host range. This is in Johnson grass. This is in Datura, which is highly toxic, semi-hallucinogenic plant that people get into sometimes. But here you can see that female Gonatoceros ashmeadi, which is the parasitoid wasp that is going after glasswing sharpshooter, survived 208 to 405% longer when it fed on brown soft scale or Lobularia maritima, which is sweet alyssum, or F. esculatum, which is the annual buckwheat, compared with a water-only diet. So this shows how important those carbohydrate nutrients are for the longevity of female wasps. So if you're in a vineyard and you have grape leafhopper, anagris is going to be one of your key parasitoids, and anagris wasp require an overwintering host in the egg stage. Well, grape leafhopper overwinters as an adult. However, in Napa, they found that either the sage or the Ligurian leafhoppers overwinter in the egg stage in the mint family. And catmint was found to be an excellent overwintering host in the Napa area. And a concurrent study with this found that it was a scatological study where they went in and looked at the feces of birds, found out that one of the major leafhopper species that they were feeding off of was in fact the Ligurian leafhopper. It came over from Liguria in the north of Italy, but they also found that sage leafhopper was a significant pest out there that was also serving as an overwintering host for the anagris in these vineyards. So incorporating some of those Lamiaceae species may be important in your hedgerows. So parasitoids go after all life stages. They go after eggs, they go after larvae, they go after nymphs, they go after adults. So here we see an egg parasitoid going after green stink bug eggs. So green stink bugs, or stink bugs in general, are a significant pest over in almonds and pistachios in the Central Valley. And so by incorporating plant species such as buckwheat, cilantro, dill, and marigolds, and phacelia, and the extrafloral nectaries found in peas, you can increase the lifespan of these female wasps so that they can go and parasitize more egg masses. So this again is one egg per host. Whereas when you go into some different interactions, you get what's called polyembryony, where an egg will be laid into the egg of usually a lepidopteran host, and this single egg will divide and divide and divide and become many hundreds of larvae. And so we can see this here in this swollen cabbage looper larvae that has obviously hundreds of maggots in it. And over here in this navel orangeworm larvae, we see 1, 2, and there's probably more in there. So this is polyembryony, where these eggs just divide and divide until they've reached the capacity of their host. Then they'll stop dividing and develop into adults. Usually, when it's polyembryony, they move on to the outside of the host and pupate outside. So this is a hornworm. The pest, the parasitoid was Cotessa congreata. And so this was an endoparasitoid. And what happened was this caterpillar had these eggs laid in it much, much earlier than you see here. And so it was allowed to feed and grow and produce more body size to accommodate all of these cocoons of the parasitoid larvae that you see on the outside. So if you ever find a larvae like this, just leave it and let all those little parasitoid wasps hatch out. Then they're also called ectoparasitoids, which tend to immobilize their larvae with venom, which prevents the host from moving around and dislodging some of these ectoparasitoid eggs that are attached on the outside. So when we get into nymphal parasitoids, so Tamaraxia radiata is a large parasitoid on Asian citrus psyllid, and it lays its eggs underneath the Asian citrus psyllid nymph and immobilizes the nymph itself. Then the larvae burrow up into the nymph and eventually emerge out through holes such as this. In any homopteran situation, you must also control ants, especially Argentine ants, if they're active in the crop system you're working in. Another larval parasitoid is Parastinus relictus, which is a parasitoid of lygus bug. And this lygus bug is greatly enhanced by the presence of Erigeron annuus and other species, but lygus bug itself is highly attracted to the plant volatiles produced by Erigeron. So you'll find a concentration of lygus and the endoparasitoid Parastinus relictus on Erigeron. So basically, they will favor the Erigeron over strawberries or cotton or other things that may be very beneficial to lygus bug. But the Parastinus relictus is attracted by both the flowers and the plant volatiles created by lygus bug feeding on the Erigeron. So when the Erigeron gets pierced and is fed upon by lygus, it produces a, for lack of a better term, an alarm volatile. And the Parastinus relictus reacts to this plant's alarm volatile, follows the scent trail back to that plant, and parasitizes the lygus bug nymph. The final type of egg parasitoid are those that go after the young stages and the adults. So in this case, we're looking at a Aphidides wasp parasitizing aphids. And in this picture here, you're looking at it laying an egg into the nymphs. But those nymphs will continue to mature and feed and eventually produce an adult that becomes what's known as a mummy. In some cases, when they're feeding on when they're attacking these nymphs, they may just sting the nymph and not lay an egg. But when they sting it or puncture it with their ovipositor, they'll turn around and feed on the hemolymph that's leaking out of that young aphid. So that hemolymph contains both carbohydrates and proteins. So that prolongs her longevity with the carbohydrates and her fecundity with the protein that she consumes in the hemolymph. So a study was done by Russell in 2015 to look at a variety of different plants that are both attractive to parasitoids and that prolong their longevity. So as we can see up here, this is cow parsley, was found to be the best plant for prolonging the longevity of parasitoid wasps. We had the flower morphology that allowed wasps to access the nectar in the nectar pool. It was wide enough because parasitoid wasps tend to have wide heads and short tongues. So they need flowers with broad corollas and shallow corollas so that they can access the nectar pool down inside. And this is a great study because it looks at a lot of different plants. Here is annual buckwheat. Here is caraway. Here is yellow rocket. But if you go down this chart, you see the grand mean. And this is, all plants tend to, you know, there's an average of longevity enhancement. And so it was found to be here at this grand mean. And this zero line that we see here was no effect. So most plants tended to prolong the lifespan of parasitoid wasps. Go down here, and these are the attractiveness to parasitoid wasps. So here's coriander up here, Coriandrum sativum. Here is wild carrot. So here is sweet alyssum, Lobelia maritima. Here's the grand mean. And so where these two intersect for attractiveness and promotion of longevity, we wind up with Barbaria vulgaris, Brassica napus, another brassica, wild cabbage. You can read these. So all of these tend to have similar morphology, but if we'll look, these all tend to be in the brassica or the Apiaceae family, with the exception of milkweed and sweet yellow clover. So dill is an Apiaceae and Umbelliferaceae for the old school. And a lot of these umbelliferous white flowers tend to be the best. So what you're looking for is flowering structures with a lot of small flowers and shallow corollas and broad corollas. Milkweed is a unique one because sometimes the aphids in there will concentrate so many of the milkweed toxins that the parasitism is not successful because the toxins inside of the aphid will kill the parasitoid. So another aspect of plants is extrafloral nectaries. These are carbohydrate resources outside of the flowering structure itself. So here's an example of one on a cherry. Here are the dark fava beans. And it's interesting how the fava bean has shown the location of its extrafloral nectary by the black dots. Plants utilize these extrafloral nectaries to attract their protectors. In this case, ants may be the protector. Then we get into the predators, or excuse me, we're still in the parasitoids. Tachinid flies are an active one. Usually they're some of the most hairy flies out there. They're ectoparasitoids, whereas they'll lay their eggs on the outside. Once the pupae burrow down in, they'll go through their life cycle and then exit the host. And many species will exit the host because many times the host will be something that is eaten by birds. So they want to get out of that host before it's eaten by birds or they become bird food. And in this stage, they may be susceptible to ground feeding beetles, entomopathogenic nematodes, or entomopathogenic fungi. And we're going to get into predators, minutes, big-eyed bugs, coccinellid beetles, lacewings, syrphids, predatory mites, and predatory thrips. So, minute pirate bugs are unique in that they oviposit underneath plant tissue. They require non-hairy, thin layered plant tissue to oviposit in. And sweet alyssum's a great one, peppers, strawberries, cornflowers, green beans. Thin epidermal tissue. Here's a picture of cow parsley that we said was the best one. Here's sweet alyssum. Once again, members of the Apiaceae and Brassicaceae tend to be the best for promoting not just parasitoid wasps, but also predators. Aureus on hedgerow plants. A lot of the work that Sam did. So big-eyed bugs are great. They've been shown to be awesome in strawberries on for lygus bug nymph control. I know several growers that swear by them. Lots of different species of coccinellid beetles. They tend to be specialists, but they're also generalists. Here we have an aphid specialist, but this will generalize and eat other species. Stethorus is a spider mite specialist. Chilocorus is a scale specialist. You see by the outside of this elytra, it's nailing itself down to the plant. Here's the mealybug destroyer, Cryptolaemus montresori. They will all benefit from floral resources. And I found that flannel plant, I forget the scientific name right now. Cryptolaemus, greatly benefited by hedgerow species. So once again, coriander, Phacelia, Coriander sativum. Adults mainly feed on pollen and nectar, and the larvae are all predaceous. We're going to skip. Look at these are different species of Phacelia, which are normally used as cover crop species, but they have different characteristics. So ciliata is the earliest blooming, Tennessetifolia is the mid-blooming, and Campanularia is latest blooming, but it gives you a broad spectrum of very beneficial plants for beneficial insects.
Hey,
Surface
Stephen,
flies.
we have 2 minutes left. Maybe we have actually 2 minutes before the hour and then up to 5 minutes after that, and then they'll cut us off. Just so
Okay. Okay, here are syrphid flies. We're all familiar with using sweet alyssum to attract syrphid flies into annual crops usually, and also incorporated into hedgerows. Here's some pictures of sweet alyssum incorporated into crop fields. I tend to prefer this interspersed mode, but many growers find it more convenient to plant single rows. So predatory mites, we break them out into specialists and generalists. Generalists, the best generalists that I've encountered are Neocoelus, or Californicus, and Amblyopsis thalassus. For the hotter weather, Typhlodomus occidentalis, which used to be Gallindromus, they tend to be the best for orchards and vineyards in the Central Valley as well. Euceus is a native predatory mite, and it tends to be dominant in some of the subtropical crops. And it is incredibly benefited by pollen producing species such as corn. So pollen for mites, corn pollen was found to be great. Olive and pistachio pollen was excellent. And unfortunately, the spider mite prey was always found to be better than pollen. That's just the nature of predators. In citrus, however, the pollen was found to greatly benefit Euceus and improve their population dynamics when coming to deal with citrus red mite. And we deal with predatory thrips. So six-prod thrips is one of the main spider mite control components over in the Central Valley almonds. Now that some of the nastier organophosphate pesticides have stopped to be used as overwintering, as dormant sprays, I should say. And in some of the subtropical crops, avocados and citrus, they found that the Franklinithrips has moved in to control some of the avocado thrips, citrus thrips, and persea mite. So since we're out of time, I'll just wrap it up. And once again, here is the QR code. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to email me or give me a call. Sometimes giving me a call is a little better, because then we can talk a little bit more in-depthly. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Can you quit sharing?
Yes.
And we have 4 questions. One is for hedgerows where irrigation isn't available, do you have portable systems that you recommend? Sam, that's a question for you.
Portable systems. Generally, we use fixed tubing with emitters, but I have seen these pods that we brought in. Remember the Schultz
were-
used those, Tom Bros used those pods that we brought in and were able to move around on a grassland we were doing, but yeah.
But it was attached to a well. She's saying where there's no irrigation isn't available? Oh, do you have portable? Oh, you're right.
Portable, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, generally, that's, I'm not that familiar. Go to your irrigation company about that one.
The other thing we have done was we worked with a grower putting in, he had a water truck. But it was problematic because they didn't water consistently, so
Yeah,
it's not the greatest situation.
interesting question.
Here's another comment. One of the biggest issues for our vineyard in rural San Diego County is that everyone fears certain plants, trees might taint the taste of wine grapes, example, sage, eucalyptus, etc. Any suggestions for better, best plants, trees for a vineyard hedgerow? I've never heard of that.
Stephen might be able to answer that one.
Yeah, I've found coyote brush is a great one. I actually know a winemaker at one of the vineyards along Vineyard Drive in Paso Robles who loves there's a specific word for it, and I forget what it is, but it is the characteristics implanted or imparted on wine grapes by surrounding vegetation. And he loves the characteristics imparted by coyote brush. And I can understand completely how eucalyptus and plants in the Lamiaceae would impart characteristics on wine grapes, because I know in doing inspections, I've spoken with people who are both viticulturists and winemakers that can taste the difference between wines made from a vineyard next to a eucalyptus grove and not yet next to a eucalyptus grove.
Mhm.
But interestingly enough, this winemaker that I'm familiar with, and he grows and makes his own wine, but he's also a winemaker for a very reputable winery in Paso Robles, likes the characteristics imparted on his wine grapes by coyote brush.
Yeah, yeah. And then coyote rush, just like that cat mint, supports the anagrus parasitoid. So you can't, and then it's also a
survivor.
backbone plant. You just can't go wrong with coyote rush. There's one more question. Thanks, Stephen. There's one more question, and it's kind of a 3-part question about squirrels. What do you do about squirrels, Sam?
You trap them, you can, they don't like to be able to see, so if you can prevent them seeing with black plastic, whatever you call that.
Screening.
Screening. Yeah, that's a difficult one. You know, Thomas
Or
Whitman
do
had
you mean ground squirrels or?
ground squirrels.
Because they're talking about squirrels in Puda Creek. That might not be ground squirrels.
Yeah, anyhow, there's a Thomas Whitman has Gophers Limited website, which has a lot of information on that. How do you compare food safety concerns with birds?
Well, Deanna Karp, who's a professor at Davis, has done a bunch of research around food safety and birds, and shows that the problem birds are those big flocking birds, the few species of flocking birds. It's because they are interacting with cattle more, and they can bring in food safety issues. But these the more diverse community that you get when you have a diversified farm, you don't get those kinds of birds, and so there's a lot less food safety and problems. I could send you those papers if you want to contact me later at info@wildfarmalliance.org.
I think the food safety concerns is, we have a concern with food safety concerns. It's a lot of the audit buyers are not familiar with some of the benefits of these things and how the benefits outweigh that, and that the pathogen disease issues are so minimal. Like Joanne, this Danny Karp has done tons of research on that. The third question is on,
It's about intercropping. So Stephen,
Yeah.
you're really big on that, right? I mean, we want perennial habitat from the hedgerow, but then you can plant annual habitat in your crop if it's an annual crop, or if it's a perennial crop like vineyards. We work with a grower who put some perennial shrubs inside the vineyard, or you can put them on that row ends too. Do you have any thoughts on that, Stephen?
Yeah, I do have thoughts on that, and it kind of goes back to the terroir of the great characteristic question. I'm working with a couple of vineyard growers that might be interested in putting catmint and some of the very low growing Lamiaceae in their vineyards as overwintering habitat for anagris. But once it all blooms, it provides excellent forage for other parasitoids and predators as well. And if you keep it at a low growing type of integration, you don't interfere with the vineyard operations either. And not interfering with cultivation operations is a critical aspect of integrating these beneficial plants into your crop systems.
All right. Did
Okay.
you have anything else?
No.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending the session today. And if you do have any other questions, let us know, email us, and we'll get
Habitat.
back to you.
habitat is where it's at.
All
Oh,
right.
it's awesome. Thank you so much to all the speakers. It was great. And thank you to all the attendees. I'm gonna play a video and then we'll be out. We'll see you tomorrow for more workshops with the California Small Farm Conference. Have a
Thank you,
good night.
Guido.